13-year-old Melody Thompson was on her way to get herself some fries and a milkshake from McDonald's, which was just a few blocks away from her house. Her dad, James Thompson, was the newly appointed chief of police in the town, but Melody loved doing things on her own, and she was always friendly and polite to everyone in town. As she walked along the busy street, humming her favorite song, she noticed two police officers a little way behind her. They were new in town, so she hadn't seen them before, but their uniforms and badges were unmistakable. One was Officer Reynolds, a tall white man, and the other was Officer Dean, a shorter black man. At first, Melody didn't think much of it. Police officers were often out patrolling, and with her dad being the new chief, she had met several of his colleagues. But as she continued down the street, she noticed that these two officers were following her. Every time she quickened her steps, they did the same, staying close but silent. Melody's heart started to beat a little faster. Something felt off. She pulled out her phone and quickly called her dad. "Hey, Dad," she whispered. "There are two cops following me. They look kinda strange." James listened quietly on the other end. "Stay calm, Melody. Just keep walking to McDonald's. I'll handle it, but keep me on the line, okay?" Melody felt a wave of comfort from hearing her dad's voice, but she kept walking. The officers suddenly sped up and reached her side. Without warning, Officer Reynolds placed a hand on her shoulder and turned her around. "Hey, you," he said. "Where are you off to? Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Melody was taken aback. She hadn't done anything wrong. All she wanted was some fries, and now these officers were looking at her like she was a suspect. "I'm just going to McDonald's," she answered, her voice steady but feeling small under their stern stares. "I haven't done anything wrong." Officer Dean smirked, crossing his arms. "That's what they all say," he muttered. "Mind if we check your pockets? Just to be sure." Melody's cheeks flushed with frustration. She didn't know why they were treating her like this, but her dad's voice in her ear kept her calm. "Dad, they're asking to check my pockets," she whispered, hoping they wouldn't notice. On the other end of the line, Chief Thompson's voice was firm. "Tell them you're calling your father, Melody. Hand the phone over if you have to." She looked up at the officers and told them confidently, "I'm calling my dad," holding out her phone toward Officer Reynolds. "He's on the line." The officers exchanged surprised glances, but they brushed off her words. Yeah, nice try, kid. Let's just see what you've got in there," Officer Reynolds insisted, reaching into her pockets. Melody tried to resist them. She was determined to stand her ground, just like her dad had always taught her. But before the officers could react further, a black police SUV pulled up to the curb. The door swung open, and out stepped Chief James Thompson. "Officers," he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made both men freeze. "Care to explain what's going on here?" Reynolds and Dean looked at each other, shock spreading across their faces as they realized who Melody's father was. In an instant, their confident smirks vanished, replaced by a mix of fear and regret. We didn't realize she was your daughter, Chief," stammered Officer Dean, stepping back. Chief Thompson crossed his arms, his gaze never leaving the officers. "And why should that matter? She's a young girl on her way to McDonald's. Do you do this to every child in Eastwood?" The officers stammered, their faces pale as they tried to explain themselves. But Melody knew, just by looking at her dad, that they were in big trouble. The street had grown quiet as people nearby started to notice the scene unfolding. Some passers-by even stopped to watch. Officer Reynolds and Officer Dean looked like they wanted to disappear into the sidewalk. Chief Thompson's eyes were fierce, and he wasn't about to let this go easily. "You've been following my daughter," Chief Thompson said, his voice low and steady, but there was no mistaking the anger simmering beneath his words. "And then you started questioning her, trying to search her bag, without any reason. Do you treat every young girl in this neighborhood like this?" Reynolds fumbled with his words. Sir, we thought she looked suspicious, that's all. Chief Thompson raised an eyebrow. Suspicious? How exactly does a 13-year-old girl, in her own neighborhood, on her way to get fries, look suspicious to you? Dean, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot, mumbled. It's just that she was acting nervous. We thought maybe she was hiding something. Chief Thompson's eyes narrowed, and he shook his head. The only reason she was nervous is because 2 police officers were following her without explanation. You both know that's unacceptable. Melody watched her father with a mix of awe and relief. She knew he was a fair man who believed in justice for everyone. But she'd never seen him like this before, so fiercely protective of her and ready to defend her without hesitation. The officers stood in silence, their faces growing red with embarrassment. Chief Thompson sighed and turned his attention to his daughter. Are you okay, Mel? He asked gently, his voice softening as he looked at her. Melody nodded. I'm fine, Dad. But they were really mean to me, and I didn't do anything wrong. Chief Thompson's jaw clenched. He looked back at the officers and took a deep breath, choosing his next words carefully. Let me remind you both of something, he said firmly. In this precinct, we are here to protect and serve every single person, without bias. That means no one should ever feel targeted or unsafe because of their age, their skin color, or where they live. Do I make myself clear? Reynolds and Dean nodded quickly, their heads down, too ashamed to meet his gaze. They had never imagined that this girl they harassed would be the chief's daughter, but they also knew Chief Thompson's words were a warning not just because of Melody, but because this behavior went against everything they were supposed to stand for. Yes, Chief. We understand, muttered Officer Reynolds, his voice barely above a whisper. Chief Thompson wasn't finished. I expect you both in my office first thing Monday morning, he said. We're going to review the procedures that you've somehow forgotten. And until then, I'll be reporting this incident to the Commissioner. The officers looked like they wanted to protest, but the fierce look in Chief Thompson's eyes silenced them. They knew better than to argue when the chief had made up his mind. Now, both of you, get back to your patrol, he ordered. And I'd suggest you remember why you wear that uniform in the first place. The officers exchanged a defeated look, nodded, and shuffled back to their patrol car. As they drove away, Melody let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her dad looked down at her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Come on, sweetheart, he said with a gentle smile. How about I walk with you to McDonald's? Melody's face lit up. Really? That'd be awesome. The two of them began walking down the sidewalk together, and as they went, Melody felt safer than ever with her dad by her side. She looked up at him, admiring his courage and strength. It wasn't just because he was the chief, it was because he was her dad, and she knew he'd always be there to protect her. When they reached McDonald's, Chief Thompson bought them both fries and milkshakes, and they sat by the window, sharing laughs and enjoying each other's company. The tension from earlier melted away, replaced by the simple joy of spending time together. But Chief Thompson wasn't going to forget what happened. He knew he had to make sure every officer in his precinct understood the responsibility that came with the badge, and he was determined to make a difference, not just for his daughter but for every person in Eastwood. As they finished their meal, Melody looked up at her dad with a smile. Thanks, Dad. You really are the best. Chief Thompson chuckled, ruffling her hair. Anytime, Mel. Now let's get you home. Little did they know, the events of that day would set off a series of changes in Eastwood's police force that would echo far beyond their small town. Word of the incident spread quickly throughout the Eastwood Police Department. By Monday morning, everyone knew that 2 officers had wrongly targeted Chief Thompson's daughter, and they could feel the tension as they gathered in the briefing room. Chief Thompson stood at the front, his arms crossed, waiting for everyone to settle in. Once all eyes were on him, he spoke, his voice calm but filled with purpose. I want to make something very clear, he began, looking around the room. What happened with my daughter should not happen to anyone. No one in this town deserves to feel unsafe or unwelcome in their own neighborhood, and it's our job to protect, not intimidate. Officer Reynolds and Officer Dean sat silently in the front row, feeling the weight of every word. They hadn't expected their actions to affect the entire department, but they were realizing just how serious Chief Thompson was about fairness and respect. They exchanged glances, each knowing they had crossed a line. Chief Thompson continued, "We're here to serve everyone equally. That means we look out for the young, the elderly, and every single resident in Eastwood, regardless of what they look like or where they come from." He paused, letting his words sink in before he added, "Officer Reynolds, Officer Dean, I expect a written apology to Melody. And starting today, both of you will undergo additional training on handling interactions with the community. I trust you'll take this seriously, for the good of the department and the people we're here to serve." The two officers nodded, their faces solemn. They knew they had a long way to go to earn back the chief's trust, and the community's. A few days later, Melody received a handwritten note from both officers, apologizing for their behavior and promising to do better. She felt a sense of closure as she read their words, and though the memory of that day still lingered, she was proud of her dad for standing up for what was right. From that day on, the Eastwood Police Department became a stronger force for good in the community. Chief Thompson's message spread beyond just his precinct, reminding every officer of the importance of respect and fairness. And for Melody, the lesson was clear: her dad would always have her back, and justice was something worth standing up for. This brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Kindly subscribe for more thrilling stories. Like and share this video. Have a nice day.